my God. Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Let's Get Unstuck, the space where we get real about the things that hold us back. The shame, the doubt, the stories we tell ourselves, and the moments that change us. I'm Tracy Edwards, writer, storyteller, and the voice behind Let's Get Unstuck. And around here, we don't do perfect. We do truth. We name what we feel. We talk about what triggered it. We untangle the story, and we find our way to something lighter, freer, and more honest. And maybe you feel stuck right now. That doesn't mean you're finished. There's a way forward. There's always a next step, and that will lead you to the person you were meant to be. And that's what it means to get unstuck. So tonight is part 3 of our 4-part motherhood series that I've been having a blast creating this with you guys. It was such a good concept. I feel like I found the 3 right other women to tell these stories. And Erin's here tonight to add a completely new layer to what has been discussed thus far. So tonight I am joined by someone whose honesty in storytelling feels like a lifeline for mothers who may be drowning and blaming themselves for it. Erin Gregory, founder of Erin Gregory Creative and a soon-to-be published author.
Let's hope. No, it will be.
It's happening. She's going to be sharing a chapter from her upcoming book. And this chapter, Motherhood, it's based on motherhood, is a story so many women will see themselves inside. Erin will take us into the raw, unpolished early months of her daughter McKinley's life. The 19-hour labor, God bless you, the inconsolable crying, the endless appointments, the formula changes, and the financial strain of living on one income far from family. But the story runs a lot deeper. She writes about postpartum depression, identity loss, and the emotional weight of stepping back from a career she loved and a career that she was thriving in because motherhood required every bit and ounce of her. She opens up about the tension in her marriage, the medical dismissal that lasted far too long. I think I just spit on myself. Excuse me. Lasted far too long. And the moment she finally pushed hard enough to get answers, leading to the discovery of McKinley's silent reflux. We're going to dive into that because I have a question about it. This chapter is about breaking, rebuilding. It's about losing yourself and finding a new version you didn't know existed. About a mother reclaiming her voice, her footing, and eventually her joy again. So Erin is the kind of person who shows up fully with empathy, honesty, and a whole lot of heart. She listens closely, speaks thoughtfully, and has a way of making people feel seen and safe just through being present. That care you're about to hear in her story isn't new. It's just who she is. So, Erin, thank you so much for trusting the space with such a vulnerable and powerful truth. And I cannot wait for you to share your story with us. But before you dive into that, can you just please tell the guests a little bit about you and why you write and why Substack?
Yeah. Who I am, that's a big one. A lot of it is wrapped up in this story. So I am founder of Erin Gregory Creative, which is a consulting content marketing studio. And I have 3 wonderful spirited daughters. McKinley, my oldest, is 12 going on 13. Maggie is 10 and Mia is 7. Plus 3 fur babies and about 200 plants. So caregiving is just in my nature. But I found Substack through a client actually last summer. He's an author, Greg Creech. He's wonderful. He writes 30,000 Days, Lessons from Japanese Psychology. I would highly recommend you check him out and give him a follow. And I do social media management for a living. So the last thing I was doing was looking for another channel to invest in. But the further I got into it with Greg's work, the more I was like, oh, I kind of get this. I'm going to start my own channel. And the rest is history. I mean, you were one of the first people I met. Chris B. Wrights was one of the first people I met. And we all have this just sort of outpouring emotional writing style. And I think we just connected through that. And Chris and I spoke to this last night, how you were instrumental in us trying some new things. And Tracy, this chapter became the unraveling of my book. So thank you for asking me to do this. And it forced me to kind of go in and revisit this story that I had never made public. So
Oh my god, I love that. I love hearing that. And I love that I love that it's like you said, I think a couple weeks ago that you're like, "Trace, I'm getting so much feedback from, like, what I've posted," and it's
yeah.
been being like and I kinda hear that sometimes, and that's the reason why I love going and doing these lives is because it encourages people to put their voice on camera for others to hear, and it gives you it encourages others to do the same, and it makes you feel seen, and it's very just raw and authentic, and people just relate to that, and I just appreciate you being here and sharing the story with all of the people that have joined us tonight. Your story has so many incredible layers. And for me, I'm not sure if anybody on here saw my motherhood 2 weeks ago, but
Mm.
I don't have a child traditionally. I went through a different route. I ended up becoming a mentor for a foster care center here in San Diego called Promise to Kids.
Which is amazing.
Thank you for that.
It's amazing.
I'm baby stepping my toes into it. It's been super, super interesting. It's kind of slower than I expected it or wanted it to be. But I was telling my husband told me yesterday, he's like, babe, just take it easy, like ease into it. Like at least I think this is good for your first one.
Yeah.
And I'm getting more involved with the overall program. So it's that's my way of nurturing and giving back. And then last week, Lynn Broderick told an insane story about her journey in motherhood, which was through her, God, fertility, after failed attempt to finally adoption. And
Yeah.
her story was so hard. She made me cry twice. Ugh, she really got
I know. Made me a little bit nervous.
no, and then your story, everything we're about to talk about and you're about to read right here, and I'll stop babbling in a second. They're genuinely things, Erin, that I had already thought about if I was to become a traditional mom.
Yeah.
Everything you touch on tonight scared the shit out of me becoming a traditional mom. And I really believe that first time mommies here tonight, or maybe not even first time, but or first time daddies or people, whatever, hearing your story is gonna really shine some light and make somebody feel understood and feel normal because of
Yeah,
what
I
they're
hope
about to read.
so.
Yeah.
I hope so. That's the goal, right? And
Yeah.
anytime we share something that's a difficult situation for us is to help other people feel seen
Mhm.
and to realize that there's a light at the end of the tunnel because when you're in it
Yeah.
and it's hard to see the way out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, with that being said, you guys, I don't know if you've been on my format before, but just to give you a rundown, I have everybody, it's a storytelling time. So just think about it when you were younger, or right now you're doing it with your kids. You read them a little nighty night story or a nap story. Aaron's going to read us a nighty night story. so,
I don't know how relaxing it'll be, but we'll see.
yeah. So just bear with us. I don't want you to rush through this. It's very important. I want everybody to hear it as clear as can be, and we'll go into Q&A afterwards. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody being here. I will try not to cry. This is called How I Lost Myself in Motherhood and Found Myself Again. When I think back to the time when I became a mother, I'm humbled to say it wasn't a magical awakening that opened me up to some new incredible love. I didn't have a great realization that life was suddenly more beautiful than it had been before. It was without question the most difficult period of my life. I remember the day I went into labor, February 23rd, 2013. I was out shopping at a strip mall when I slipped on some ice. I was fine, a little sore on my left leg, but otherwise unscathed. Then on the way home, I realized that I had wet myself. My water had broken. It wasn't the dramatic movie style gush, more of a slow drip. As a first mom, I wasn't even sure it was happening. So, to be safe, my husband Mike and I drove the 45 minutes to our hospital. And as you may have guessed, my water had indeed broken, and the doctor advised inducing labor to prevent infection.
Mm.
Proud and perhaps definitely a bit naive, I initially refused the epidural. My mom never had one, and I was determined to follow her lead. I'd been a college swimmer after all. I could handle pain. Surely, if I could manage 3-hour workouts in a cold pool at 5 in the morning, I could handle this. Well, I was wrong. About 10 hours into what became a 19-hour labor, I gave in. That was the beginning of a long season of letting go of pride, of perfectionism, and my ideas of what motherhood was supposed to look like. When they placed McKinley in my arms, all 10 fingers and toes perfect and wiggling, I felt pure relief. We did it. She was here, she was healthy, and then she started to cry, and she didn't stop. The peaceful hospital period that so many parents describe, the one where the baby sleeps soundly in the bassinet while family visits and everyone revels over the new arrival, never happened for us. When the nurses took McKinley to the nursery for her exams, hoping to give us a short break, they returned an hour later to ask if she could eat because she still hadn't stopped crying. They were at a loss for the reason. All the tests came back clear and she was, for all intents and purposes, healthy. Those first few months were brutal. We took turns pacing the floor through the night, stealing bits of sleep when we could. It was a constant mix of exhaustion, frustration, and fear. My hormones were all over the place, and nobody had prepared me for how that would feel. Everyone talks about bouncing back physically, but what we really need is honesty about how lost, overwhelmed, and confused new mothers can feel. I was grieving the woman I'd been and struggling to find my footing in this new role. Postpartum depression didn't creep in, it took over. McKinley's colic consumed our days. We lived in Missouri then, far from family. Our parents were supportive, but just as unsure as we were. I pushed our pediatrician for answers. She ordered allergy testing, which revealed a milk protein allergy, so we switched to a sensitive formula. It helped, but it wasn't enough. She still cried and refused to eat. By 6 months, she weighed just 8 pounds. Hearing the phrase failure to thrive nearly broke me. She was also diagnosed with torticollis, a condition that develops when a baby's head tilts to one side because the neck muscles are tight or shortened, likely from her position in utero. We had to start physical therapy right away to loosen and stretch those muscles. And you can imagine how much our already fussy baby loved that. I remember sitting on the soft mat beside the therapist as she gently pulled McKinley's head to the opposite side, trying to ease the tension while she screamed. I remember thinking, is this my life now?
Mm.
After another desperate appointment, we were referred to a GI specialist in St. Louis. We turned it into a small adventure with a night in a hotel, pizza in bed, and a moment to breathe before the appointment. But the car ride there was miserable. She screamed the entire way. At one point, defeated, I kicked and broke the car door. A moment Mike and I half laugh about now. Remember when you kicked in my car door, he'll say? Sure. I'm a better person now because of that phase. The doctor in St. Louis Children's Hospital was our saving grace. The diagnosis was silent reflux, a new medication, a formula thickened with infant oatmeal, and a little olive oil for calories finally helped. Day by day, she began to gain weight. Sleep came in waves, and slowly we regained our sanity. By her first birthday, her smiles outnumbered her cries. That first year changed everything. Leaving my job to care for McKinley is a decision I'll never question, but it came with an identity shift I hadn't expected. The feeding schedules, the financial strain, the numbness all broke down the foundation I had created for myself. I wasn't just rebuilding my energy, I was rebuilding myself. Running became my way back. 1 mile at a time, I found space to breathe and remember who I was before the storm hit. I earned my fitness instructor certification, a small, tangible reminder that I could still contribute in a way that felt familiar. As McKinley's health improved, I began freelancing with a local media partner, writing during naps, reconnecting with editors, and slowly rediscovering myself. The addition of McKinley forced both me and Mike to re-examine our situation. We wanted to be closer to family. Missouri put us 10 hours from mine, 15 from Mike's. The most stable route was for Mike to request a relocation with his company. We had hoped for a larger city with more career opportunities, but fate took us to Terre Haute, Indiana, a community of about 58,000 people. Terre Haute was small and quiet, the opposite of the career-driven world I'd once envisioned for myself. But the place I resisted most became one of the most formative chapters of my life. My mom's best advice during that time was find your why. We had grown up in the YMCA. I taught swim lessons at the facility in my hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and volunteered in high school to help build the playground near our house. The Y had always been part of our family story. My parents made health and community a priority, encouraging us to stay active, not just for ourselves, but for the people we loved. My mom also reminded me to take advantage of the childcare at the Y, to give myself a few minutes to breathe, move, and enjoy something as simple as a hot shower. So I found the Y and signed up. During my first few days there, I sat down with the director at the time to talk about the organization and some of the great things she had planned. I shared a bit about my marketing background, and she asked if I'd be interested in helping her put together a monthly newsletter. I was thrilled. Then she asked if I'd consider teaching a group fitness class. She saw something in me before I did. Her encouragement gave me the confidence to lead and put myself out there again. My classes became my community. I met other parents, moms who were tired, hopeful, and determined just like me. We ran together in the mornings, sharing stories about the challenges of parenthood. Those runs were therapy, a reminder that we were still human, not just mothers trying to hold it all together. That group encouraged me to run my first half marathon, which eventually led to a series of races, including a sprint triathlon. Step by step, I began to find myself again in a new form and at a new pace. As a way to show my gratitude for the director's encouragement and to give back to my new community, I joined the Parent Advisory Committee. I always encourage people to find a way to be of service, especially during seasons of growth or uncertainty.
Mm.
It helps you stay grounded and connected to something larger than yourself. Stepping outside of your own head brings perspective. It shifts the question from why me to how can I help? During this phase, I also began freelancing for the local newspaper, covering community stories and local events. Between teaching, writing, and raising McKinley, life began to feel full again and intentional. I was growing in a new direction and finally finding my footing. As McKinley got older and started sleeping through the night, that small gift of rest was life changing. Years later, when leadership changed at the YMCA, I stepped into a new role as Director of Marketing and Membership. Opportunity comes in the most unexpected places. Each step I took after having McKinley, from freelancing in Missouri to teaching that first group exercise class in Terre Haute, helped me find my way back to myself.
Mm.
Looking back, I can see how much motherhood shaped the person I am. Her picture comes up and it makes me cry.
Oh, I love that.
It's good.
That's good.
Looking back, I can see how much motherhood shaped the person I am today. That experience was the starting point for a career in storytelling and a life structured around purpose instead of pressure. I learned that purpose is built in pieces through sleepless nights, persistence, reinvention, and people who believe in you before you do. Been a long road, Tracy.
I'm just listening to it. It really has been. It's so inspiring. Go on. We'll get to it. Go on.
If I have any advice for those of you in your own messy middle right now, it's this. When you're lost in that difficult in between phase of life, I don't know if I can finish. Keep working to find yourself. Don't settle for circumstances that don't serve you. You can't serve your family or your community if you don't serve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Put your oxygen mask on, even if it's in the middle of the crash. Terre Haute taught me that your situation is what you make it. You can resist it or you can let it refine you. Every race I ran, every story I wrote, every class I taught added another piece of who I was becoming and how I got to where I am today. Running Erin Gregory Creative and owning my time and story. Change will always come, but growth isn't about speed or perfection. It's about direction and persistence. And if you can stay open to where the middle takes you, the messy, unpredictable, difficult middle, you'll find that's where your purpose often begins. I really thought I was going to get through it without.
No, you're making me emotional. And I realize that I keep like dabbing my face with my glass cleaner. So, like, I have like makeup all over my glass cleaner right now. But
um,
anyway, I mean, I love everything about the story because it's the layers, it's the honesty, and it's truth, and you don't dramatize any of it. I mean, you just and you don't make it bigger than it and what it is, so it just lands. You show what real strength looks like, and even when you're tired, and
which is
even when you're
constantly.
Say what?
I said, which is constantly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but you still advocated anyway. I mean, let's walk through the journey together, and we'll talk through some of these because I have questions, and you kind of touched on some of my questions. So we're gonna bring it back in though, so we can give a little bit more attention to him here.
Sure.
So I want you to think about like the part of losing yourself kind of all at once when I ask this. When you think about when you think back to those earliest weeks when everything felt like it was happening all at once, what
Mhm.
part of that season hit you the hardest emotionally?
Um, it sounds silly, but what going to a doctor appointment when you're an athlete is almost like a moment of pride.
Mm,
And you go in and you're like, yes, I'm healthy. Yes, my heart's healthy. Yes, all the things. And then you go in and you're responsible for another human. And that human is not healthy and thriving. And your mom, who's my source of truth for parenting, and my husband's mother, they had no idea what was going on. They were hours away, first of all, and the doctors didn't know. So there's no way they could. So when I was at her appointment, gosh, she was probably 2 months old. So we had 2 months of essentially not sleeping at all. I mean, maybe 2 hours a day. And I went to that appointment and she hadn't gained weight and she still wasn't eating and they didn't have any answers. And I was at that point, I hadn't like reached my limit yet.
yeah.
And I was just listening to the doctor, and I've since, going through her stuff and, my second daughter went through some things and losing my father-in-law, like doctors are humans. And I think it's okay for us to push back. And that's why second opinions exist. But I didn't realize that yet. I was, still so early in this, whole adventure of ours. And so when that happened, I just remember going home that day and I called my mom on the phone and she just said, how are you? And I said, everything's terrible. Every day is terrible. Um, and I spoke to this a little bit when was on with Chris last night, that she's pretty strong. Like, if you don't have to use medication, don't use it. It's a last resort kind of thing. So that was what I was accustomed to. And I had always kind of worked through problems. And when I called her that day, she said, I'm worried about you. Do you need to see a doctor?
Yeah.
And that was the point where I was like, okay, something's really wrong if she's if she's saying that to me. Like that so that was kind of when I started to acknowledge the fact that I was really struggling.
Was it now was it more about, like, the grief of losing a version of yourself that was or was it more about that you were kind of losing your mind and body in essence because of postpartum? Like, what would
Yeah.
you attach that to if you
I I mean, it was everything because while this was also happening, I was on my 12 weeks of paid leave. And is like, as I got further and further down through that 12 weeks, I just had to accept that I was not going back to work.
Mm,
And I never knew what that picture really looked like when I was pregnant. It was always very much like, I'm going to see how it goes because the company I worked for, whom I loved, I mean, I was working 60-hour weeks, making like $13 an hour as a publicist. So it wasn't sustainable. And I could have done it part time, but I just really I had to be home with her full time, and that was the reality of it.
and absolutely, and even so, I mean, even if you were ready and you needed childcare, I mean, I've just from listening to y'all, like, it's expensive.
It's
And
insanely expensive.
And even at that such a young little infant age, you don't want anybody with your girl. You just want to be with her all the time. From what I'm learning from you guys, it's so it makes
Yeah.
sense as to why you wanted to just be home and just dedicate your time to being with McKinley. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Tracy, and I used to feel guilty about this, I didn't. I had to. I
Yeah.
wanted desperately to be able to get away to something, but, our doctor told us not to leave her with people because of how uncomfortable she was. And, eh, so we couldn't. I mean, we were there 24/7. And I think the one time that we got an afternoon off was when my mother in law came for a couple of days. And we were desperate. And so she flew from Pittsburgh. and stayed with
Oh
us. And we just went out for lunch and came back. It was like a 2 hour time frame, and she cried the entire time we were gone.
gosh, that's
So
so
yeah, I
well,
mean,
no,
it's
go
hard
ahead.
because, like, so many people go through so many hard things with kids, and for something like this, it didn't feel like it was enough to be so consumed and so, depressed about it because, I mean, she had reflux. We just
Mhm.
didn't know what it was, so it was kind of that unknowing that played with us for so long, and, once we kinda, like we got on a path forward, it started to get better, but going 6 months with her not gaining weight, not knowing what the problem was what really kinda ate away at us.
Well, because in your story, there's a moment where new mom exhaustion turns into concern, not just for you, but for your baby, for
Yeah,
McKinley. It's when you realize something isn't right, even before you have answers. And I think this part's important because I'm sure a lot of women, especially first time moms, recognize that moment, but don't always trust it or know what to do with it.
mhm.
So, can you take us back to that moment when you knew this wasn't just the hard part of motherhood?
Yeah, when I realized that this is motherhood. Um, I mean, and honestly, to an extent, it is. This is life, and that's why I kind of had this change in perspective throughout the course of all of my circumstances. But it, you get to a point where you stop wanting to be the victim of your own life. And that was really how I felt. And when you're in that kind of depressed state, it is how you feel. It's the world is out to get me. What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? I did all the things right when I was pregnant. How could I have screwed this up? But none of that matters at all. And once you kind of get to that realization that, like, okay, I did the things right. I exercised, I ate healthy, and in the greater scheme of things, she is healthy and thriving and wonderful and beautiful and almost 13 and driving me nuts. And I'm so grateful every day. She was me and Mike's greatest growth curve. I mean, all at once. We were just kind of assholes, as you tend to be at 25.
Of course, of course. Well, I mean,
So,
like, was there one phase of, you know, the motherhood part, like, I mean, with all the different layers that you went through that was the most strenuous on you? Like, was it like the silence? Was it the whole discovery journey of the silent reflux?
yeah.
Which, by the way, who the hell names something silent when it's so not silent? Like, I don't understand that. And like, I started to kind of Google it last night, and I'm like, wait a minute, why is it called this? But wait, but the McKinley was crying so much. I was like, I just don't understand it. That is false,
Yeah.
like not advertising, but it's false, like whatever.
Identification.
Yeah, thank you. False identification.
Yeah. So the silent part, which is what made it hard to identify. So, most we've all had kind of like reflux or heartburn. You kind of know, like, the stomach acid comes up and it burns. So hers would just sit in her throat. And she had that milk protein allergy, which Mia, my third daughter, had as well. But I knew at that point, kind of what to expect for one. I mean, she was colic too for like 6 months. But we were like, okay, we know we've expected this, not expected, you never expect it, but
Sure.
um we knew how to approach it. And so the unknowing was the worst part because it could have been anything. And not knowing if your child is gonna make it is pretty terrifying.
Well, and this will lead perfectly into my next question. So when answers don't come and support feels limited, it's easy to turn everything inward.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk about that period. Did like what that did. I want to talk about what that period did to you, the way that you saw yourself, because if you're not getting the answers, like, did you kind of like look back and go, like, what kind of mom am I? Or like,
Oh,
what am I
100%.
doing wrong? Or like,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my older sister, had her first child, her son, my nephew, a year before McKinley was born. They're about 6 months apart.
mm,
And he was just perfect little chunky happy baby. Like, we used to joke all he does is smile. So that was this picture I had. That was the first grandbaby of my sisters and I, the first baby. I'd been around since, I babysat when I was in middle school and high school. um and it's totally different perspective when you see babies as an adult and you're thinking about having one.
Yeah.
So I thought that, like, this was gonna be the experience. It was gonna be great. She was gonna sleep and eat, and I was gonna be able to breastfeed like a good little crunchy mom that I was. And then none of it. None of it
Oh,
happened. Um, so but we got through it.
of
And then
course.
at the end of the day, like, that's what made us better and stronger, and helped us to get out of ourselves. I mean,
Mhm.
I was never somebody who identified as struggling with anxiety or anything, but once I realized I had no control over my life, then that starts to play a part.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a shift in your story,
Mhm.
not because things suddenly got easy, but because you stopped ignoring your own voice.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that moment of change for that. Once you pushed for answers and trusted yourself,
Mhm.
how did that change the way that you saw yourself, not just as a mother, but as a woman who could advocate and lead?
Yeah. So when our pediatrician just refused to move us forward in any direction, we had to push for everything. I had to push for the allergy testing. And by the time she was, I think, 5 months old, because we went to St. Louis when she was around 6 months old. So it was 5 months of, and when you have a newborn, you're in the doctor just typically once a week for the first, like, month, and then every 2 weeks as they get bigger, and then so we were there all the dang time, stocking up on formula because they gave out formula samples. And she had no answers. And it was so frustrating because they tried to say it was colic, but colic babies still eat. And it's usually for like 3-hour chunks in the evenings when they're colic, or like isolated time periods. And I mean, she was all day long. So we knew that there was something else happening. And I mean, I was so tired and so sick of not knowing what was going on that I mean, I went into the pediatrician that day and was just like, we need to do something else. And had never really been a fan of I'm not the person to be aggressive.
Mhm.
I'm competitive as I'll get out, but I don't like to I hate controversy. I'd rather find a peaceful resolution in any way that I can. And that was when I kinda had to put that aside and be like, "All right, I have to be the mean guy." And that was when she gave us the referral to GI and we got some answers. So I felt a bit of relief, I think. I don't think I felt any sort of change in my confidence until, I mean, months, if not a year or 2 later.
Mhm. I mean, and it's not even like it was an intuitive thing because you're just like, there's clearly something going on and you have
Yeah.
not identified anything at all. And you just, poor thing that you're just going home and banging your head against the wall because you just don't have any answers. And McKinley's in so much pain and you just like, you feel helpless. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we did. We felt super helpless. I mean, I would call my husband. He had a territory when we lived in Missouri for the company he represented. And he had some flexibility if he was nearby that day, and I would call him and just cry and just beg him to come home. I mean,
Yeah.
thinking back on that now, being like, I mean, we were 2, 3 years into our marriage, and I was like, it must have just been so hard for him too. Um, but I didn't care.
But he was there though, he was supportive, it's just he had to bring in the money because you couldn't
Yeah,
work at that time, so it's like you had to divide and conquer, which still doesn't make it any easier because, you're sometimes I feel like people when they say moms or stay-at-home moms they're just stay-at-home moms, like, that's bullshit, like, that is, like,
it is
probably one
the
of
hardest job.
it is the absolute one of the
Yeah.
hardest jobs, and I have, like, I have so much respect for them because I see what some of my friends go through. I've seen what my sister-in-laws go through, and you are so emotionally and physically drained, and it
Mhm.
shows, like, it
Yeah.
shows, and,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
I
please
was just
go.
gonna say it's so hard, Tracy, because I mean, there's so many opinions about what moms should do, right? What women should do, and you feel that too.
Mhm.
And if I had known my motherhood journey was going to be like that, if someone had said at the age of 24, like, hey, just so you know, I mean, it would have been a real deterrent for me to jump into that journey. But but the best thing that I learned from all of it was the importance of having something for myself, whether it was work, whether it was running, whether it was gardening, whatever it is. So, whether you're a working mom, a full time stay at home mom, a traveling, circus mom,
Yeah.
it's so important to have something that makes you feel like you,
Yeah.
because that was the hardest part was just, I went from, athlete and publicist of a major entertainment company and having all these friends and going to nightclubs and stuff and basically doing whatever we wanted. And then, switching gears 180 degrees. And I had no idea who I was.
And that alone is difficult.
Hmm.
I mean, for me, that's difficult. Like, I mean, you kinda you have to go through, like, almost an entire self-discovery, self-discovery.
Yeah.
Um, well, up until that point, we've talked about survival, getting through the hardest season, finding answers, and learning to trust yourself again. But there's also the part that comes after survival when life starts to stabilize and you begin to notice what's actually changed inside you. So let's talk about that. Looking at your life now, what parts of you feel strongest or most grounded that were shaken during the first year of motherhood?
I would say everything. I have less endurance now. That's maybe the one thing that's missing. But everything. I mean, when I graduated college, I jumped right into sales, and I always wanted to go to the entertainment industry and be a big publicist, whatever. And through our journey, I finally got there, and then that was no longer in the picture. And, so your point about rediscovering yourself, I think my way of kind of coping with that after going through so many ups and downs that we had for like a good 10 years was just acknowledging that who I am today is not who I'm going to be next week. And
Mhm.
that's okay. And to just roll with some of that, because I tried so hard for so long to hold on to the person that I was comfortable with. And it's hard to do that when you're already a foot out the door. And I don't know, I think that so much of our lives, we resist change,
Mhm.
and the anxiety of having to deal with change is worse than the actual change itself.
Isn't it?
Um,
That is such a true statement. It's like I do it. I've done it where you are so anxious inside to make a next move. You
mhm.
build up such a block inside you because you're so afraid of what that next step going over looks like, and you want it to be so perfect. But when you finally go over it, you're kind of like, oh,
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, hey,
Yeah,
life is okay. It might not be perfect, it might not be pretty, but you did it, and
yep,
I'm okay. Like, I love that.
yeah. You learn that you can survive some pretty hard things, and through all of it, I believe in, kind of, you manifest the life you want. And ever since I kind of came to that conclusion by my own actions and being like, oh, so that job helped me get this job, helped me get this job, helped
Mhm.
me get this job, okay, I can actually do this, I just have to be strategic about it. um you start to feel like, okay, maybe I don't have control over my life, but I at least can, like, I can make these moves that are going to get me in the direction I want.
For sure. For sure. And that's what I wanna jump into because you did a lot of rebuilding your career and identity.
Mhm.
So, let me move up here. One thing I wanna be clear about this particular part is that you didn't rebuild your life after motherhood, you literally rebuilt it inside it.
Mhm.
So, even though you were still parenting, still navigating everything that comes with that. So when you started to find your own footing again, it wasn't just about work. It was about who you were becoming while you were still being
Yeah.
mommy.
Yeah.
So, how did returning to work change the way you saw yourself, not away from motherhood, but alongside it?
So I love the why. And my book, my editor jokes that my book is a love story to the YMCA. But it's the people that tend to just be a part of an organization like that. And the YMCA Terre Haute that we went to is anything but fancy. It was old. It did not even have a great reputation. But even that being said, the people were wonderful, and I did not expect to find community there. I mean, this little small town with very few opportunities for work for me, and then I walked into this, fitness center, and someone's offering me a job in a capacity that I could actually handle. Because when I took on that first fitness class, I was so terrified. And, just the idea of committing to something again as somebody who's like, I thrive on being busy. Um,
Yeah, you
and
do.
at that at that phase of life, the idea of having a 1 hour commitment 3 days a week was terrifying for me, because I was like, all that has to happen is McKinley has to have a bad day. But I did it, and it was fine. And that's kind of like the lesson I kept learning, and like all these decisions that I kept being so scared to make, even starting this business. I 2 years ago, and I've been doing this part-time for since McKinley.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, I had two clients who wanted to um not partner, but basically pay for me to work full time between the two of them. So one had a certain percentage, the other had a certain percentage. I thought it was great because I was like, sweet, I'm basically independent. I just have two clients and it's perfect. Was not perfect. One of them ended up going under about 6 months in. And that was one of those moments where I was like, well, shoot, I just need to go find another full time job because this is clearly not sustainable. And a mentor of mine said, hang on a second. I think you've got something here.
Hmm.
And that was all he said. Like, he didn't offer me any business or anything. But I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. And here we are 2 years later, and I've got a full roster of clients, and I get to choose how much I want to work so I can still be there for the late night basketball practices and the weekend games. And I'm almost always available to my kids when they get off the bus. And that's so important because they used to hate it when they'd get home and I'd be on calls. When I did government contracting, I just lived on calls constantly.
Right.
So,
You get to be present, and
mhm.
not there's not a lot of moms out there that actually have that opportunity, especially new moms. And I feel for new moms that have to go back to work, especially after, just only having the 3 or 4 months that they get off. And I know how difficult that is. I've seen how difficult it is. A lot of women wait for the right time to start again when things are calmer and easier and even more predictable. What did this period teach you about timing, especially starting before everything felt settled?
That there is no right time.
Perfect.
Um, I mean, if it's kind of like that old adage of the fisherman who was waiting to get saved, and a boat came by, and he said, "No, God's going to save me." And then another boat comes by, and he said, "No, God's going to save me." And then he looks up at the sky and says, "God, why have you forsaken me?" He said, "What do you think the boats were for?"
Yeah.
And it's like, don't, kick a gift horse in the mouth. If someone's offering you an opportunity, even if you're scared, at least try. And if it doesn't work out, so what? That's what we always tell our kids. If they are all involved in different activities, and it's with the intent of helping them to build that resilience of failure and having to deal with difficult teammates and difficult coaches. I mean, I write about that a lot too because there's so many correlations between what I see in the workforce and what my kids go through.
Right.
And one of my favorite colleagues, a mentor of mine who I worked with at VA, he said, "You're good at what you do because you're a mom. Is you know how to manage chaos, you know how to balance emotions." And I think that is very, very true. I mean, moms in the workforce are incredible assets and sometimes don't get the rewards that they should because they're balancing so much. But I am a better employee because of my kids, and I think I'm a better mom because of my work. And they complement one another, and that's how I structured this business that I have because I don't see it as two different entities. It's not work life and home life.
No, they
It's my life.
coincide.
Yeah,
Yeah. You parallel that, it all works together. I mean, you've built literally exactly how you want your life to work and how it's gonna fit with your family, and that's
yeah,
incredible. That's why I really like spending a little bit of time on this story because I want other mothers out there to hear that if, you've taken that step back because you had to be fully present with mamahood, that's
mhm,
totally fine. But like you can take that next step and build what it is that you want and still be that mom that's present while you're still able to build that thriving business that you love and makes your heart tick even more. Um,
yep.
what did rebuilding your career while still navigating motherhood show you about what's actually possible even when life feels with full and demanding?
Yeah, so I mean, it really brought to my attention the things that are wrong with our workforce
Yeah.
more than it brought opportunity. I mean, I have been blessed to have had the amount of opportunities that I've had, but I'm also I mean, I don't stop, right? So, I go after things constantly. But the workforce is tough out there for moms. Childcare is insanely expensive, and the way the workday is scheduled versus the school day doesn't make sense. So, what I hope to encourage people on my channel to do is to figure out within your skill set and your passions how you can structure your life so it works better for you because we're so strained and we're all I mean so many are so angry at each other because of the constraints of the system and all the different things. And I have colleagues and friends and family who've done it through different industries. My sister's a registered dietitian. And 2 years ago, her kids are a bit younger than mine. She was at that point where she had been a stay at home mom and was like, okay, I'm pulling my hair out. Now I need something to do. And so she just one client at a time, and she's got a couple right now because her kids are still young, and that's enough. But she now has a couple partnerships with gyms and different insurance agencies where she gets to do her work around her schedule. And as she, decides when they get older, if she wants to add more and scale up, she knows how now.
Mhm.
So it's possible to do it across different industries. It's not limited to, marketing and digital creators by any means. But I would just encourage them all to just keep trying to find that balance that works for you and don't live in that place of this is just how it goes.
Well, is this something that is this something that Aaron Creative, is that part of something that you do that, and I'm not trying to like, talk all business and stuff, but like, is that something that you do that you can help like maybe moms that are listening? Is that part of your business model where you kind of assess what somebody's skill sets are and maybe have some guidance and mentorship to them to help them kind of get back on their feet in essence, or is that not your model?
No, I'd love to. I mean, that's not part of my business per se, but I talk to fellow moms and women who I've worked with all the time. And moms are not. I have
Yeah.
just women in the workforce trying to navigate it. That's enough on its own, right?
No,
So, but yeah,
I called you. I feel you. I called you the other day and I was like, I
yeah,
might need to talk to you about something because shit happens and you're like you said, your boss is like, business might not be booming and you might have to switch clients and that gets scary
yeah.
and I mean, I have no shame. I'm open about it. So it's like I lean on the people that I know in my network and that's why I reached out to you just saying like, I don't know what's happening. I might need your help here whether
Yeah,
like you said,
yeah.
it doesn't need to be a
I mean,
mom. It's just
I'm like a career job hopper until I created my own business. So, if I'm good at anything, it's finding jobs because I've had to do it so much in my life. We moved a ton. And life circumstance just took me in different directions that I had to find different opportunities that worked for what we were doing at that time. So yeah, I have conversations like that with men and women, honestly, mostly women, but I speak to whomever needs help, and just kind of it helps to just kind of talk through what you're thinking and to share some insights on lessons learned.
That's so true. And it also takes a bit of encouragement too, because when you get you get certain news, you get down, and nobody wants to be told things are going to change and you're going to have to get back into that workforce. At least I know that that's like terrifying for me because
Yeah.
you just it's difficult out there, and you know your strengths and you know what you're great at, but it's not
Mhm.
always one of those things that's available for you to move into right away from one thing to the next is what I'm getting at. But
Yeah. I mean, I've gone I don't even know how many jobs. That sounds terrible.
no.
It's not that many. But I mean, we've moved like 9 times.
Yeah.
So but the consistency throughout that is every job that I had taught me really cool things.
Hmm.
So, I did the entertainment industry for a few years. I've done nonprofit for like at least 10 years. That is like my love. I adore supporting nonprofit organizations. But I did federal consulting. I work with small tech companies, helping them with their messaging. And I've just had a really cool opportunity to pick up on a ton of stuff along the way that gave me the skills to run a company. And if I scaled, if I grew, I know I would need help, but I don't know at this phase if I'm looking to do that. I kind of just like where I am.
Perfect. Well, getting to the end of our little conversation here, and I'm loving every bit of this. For a lot of women, men listening may recognize themselves somewhere in your story, feeling stuck, unsure, or disconnect from who they used to be. So, centering around the getting unstuck here, for someone who feels stuck in motherhood right now, what's one place you'd encourage them to start trusting themselves again? And I know you touched on a lot of things when we
Mhm.
were kind of several questions ago, but if you can kind of hone in on maybe a couple.
Yeah. So you are your child's first and most important advocate. And that is a significant growth curve. It was for me, especially if you're dealing with, sickness or something like postpartum depression. But you know your child better than any doctor ever could. So trust yourself when it comes to their health, and then find your why, whatever that means for you. If it's gardening, if it's going to poker
Mhm.
with the guys, or you just have to have that space that helps you remember who you are outside of your role as a parent.
And it's not easy. It's not always easy to like find that why. I mean, that takes a lot of digging deep. I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't know my why for where Let's Get Unstuck came from until last May. And it took
Yeah.
me 5 years to figure out, like, what that looks like and what my next steps are and what that purpose is. And it's something as silly and small as hearing out 1 or 2 lines off of a podcast that I listened to that,
Yeah.
you stopped me in my tracks, and I went, "Holy shit, that's me." Like,
Yeah.
"Whoa." Um, that's what's going on, and it's interesting because when you finally can figure out your why, and sometimes that takes, just simply from finding the name to whatever that feeling is inside of you to go, "Oh, okay, like, maybe that's why I've
Yeah.
been," it's not easy. So, I didn't wanna paint that picture of it being just, the why's difficult,
Yeah.
but like you say, "Yes, daddy's home. Yes, daddy's home. Yay." My fur baby is, all excited. You might hear her scream. But anyway, well, this is the end anyway, and before we jump, Erin, I just wanna know, like, what's next for you? So tell people what you're working on because 'cause you've got an awesome book that's nearly finished.
Yeah, so book has turned into books.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's gonna be 2 by the time it comes out. I am very true to my, positioning statement of the messy middle because it's just where I live, and what you just said is exactly what, I've really, like, based my entire platform around, is this idea that you have to kind of go through the process to figure it out. And I was the same thing. I mean, I started writing on Substack last fall and, met you, met Chris, met a few other wonderful collaborators and was like, "Oh, I'm starting to figure this thing out." So, if it's not writing, I'm a huge advocate for the creative arts. So, if it's music, if whatever that looks like for you, dabble in something creative because it opens you up and it opens up the opportunities and you kind of guide yourself without knowing it. And that's very much what happened with this book of mine, which is about this couple who I met in Indiana who just through their life circumstance quit their six-figure jobs and decided to start building an investment business with $20,000 to their name. And they had three kids to raise. So I met them in Terre Haute and was like, "How?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, "Oh, I can start an investment business." But I didn't wanna do that. That wasn't what I was passionate about. So I wrote their story, and along the way, I started to write mine and realized that what I wanted to do was have my own thing, tell my own stories that inspired people, that hopefully helped some people along the way,
Mhm.
and be able to lead by example for my kids. I want them to know that they can, lead the life they want when they get older, to take bold chances. And my husband's down in the basement creating his own. I don't even know what song he's on right now. He's written like 20 songs in the last couple of years because he's going through
Amazing.
his own journey too. So, they have all really inspired us in that way to lead by example because we want them to be whoever they are meant to be fully without judgment, which is very aspirational. But the best thing we can do is try to lead that example for them.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, before we end and exit out of this, do you have any other things that you want to add or
I don't think so. Stay tuned for the books.
when
the
are they coming out though? Like I know you were close, you're on the like one toward the last chapter of one of them. I mean, you're getting there.
Yeah. The first one is essentially done. That one has been done for a while. I just need to kind of go through and round it out now that I'm separating the two of them. So mine is the one I've been working on really over the last year. So my hope is to get them out in the spring. Time of course willing.
Well, you'll have your biggest supporter and promoter here pushing your books
Thank you.
and just I absolutely cannot thank you enough for being a part of this womanhood series. Like I said, I didn't think I had any business starting something like this, but then I was inspired by Lynn's story, which connected to me about, her adoption process and realizing that, motherhood's different for everybody. And it's,
Yep.
your journeys are not going to be alike. And I think the more that, the more we talk about that and the more we can be a space for other mothers out there to feel like they can relate and connect and that they're not alone. I think that's important. I mean, last night I was scrolling through Substack and which I haven't been doing lately, and I actually came across this lovely woman. I think her name's Katrina or Katie. I can't remember. I think I tagged you in her post.
I'll have to go
Um,
back and look.
yeah, because she was saying, where are all the mothers out there? Like, can we get a group for
Yeah.
mothers? And I'm all, holy
Yeah.
cow! I was like,
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
"Great." I was like,
I know. Let's do
I was like,
it.
I hate to chime in on your note here, but like, please join tonight with you and I because that's what this is about. And we've been searching for more mothers to talk to,
Yeah.
and for them to share their stories. I mean, even after I have Ellen next week, she is my girl. Ellen is amazing. She has a crazy, wild story that is pretty heavy. Probably, it's very heavy. But she's after her, I segue into a woman named Isabella, and just coincidentally, her story just happens to be about a different version of motherhood as well. So it's kind of just morphing into something here. I don't know.
No, I
But
love it. I mean, moms need more honest stories because the expectation of motherhood being this beautiful,
yeah,
perfect experience, I mean, it's debilitating to try to live up to. So don't.
that's actually a really perfect advice to end with, Erin. so,
There you
so
go.
don't. Actually, it's
Don't
true.
be perfect.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you for being here. I'll end the night, guys. If something you heard today made you think or feel, that's the point.
Mhm.
Getting unstuck isn't about fixing yourself. It's about understanding yourself and forgiving yourself so you can grow into the best version of who you're already becoming. So, what I will say is there is hope and there is a light ahead. So, for more real conversations like this, subscribe to my blog. It's outside of Substack. It's letsgetunstuck.blog, where I share every story, every post, and every live episode. I'm Tracy Edwards. This is me. This is my truth. And thank you guys. And thank you, Erin. And have a
Thank
great
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.